We are now 42 days away from the November midterm election. To make sure you're prepared for Election Day, KVUE News is launching a new segment, Vote Texas Face Off. You can catch it here on midday every Tuesday. Today we're going to discuss the Texas race for the U.S. Senate between Republican Senator Ted Cruz and Democratic Congressman Beto O'Rourke. Weighing in today are Ed Espinoza and Matt Makoviak. Ed Espinoza is the Executive Director of Progress Texas, an organization advocating for progressive ideals and policies. He has more than 20 years of experience providing strategic communications counsel for 50 campaigns and served as the Western States Director at the Democratic National Committee. Matt Makoviak is a political and communications consultant who is also president of Potomac Strategy Group. He served in senior roles for 2 U.S. senators and for then Governor George Bush. Makoviak currently serves as chairman of the Travis County Republican Party. Good morning to you both, and thank you for joining us.
Good to be here.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
Let's first talk about the Cruz O'Rourke debate that previously happened last week. I'll first give you both a chance to talk about your overall thoughts on how those candidates performed. Mr. Ed, we'll start with you.
Mr. Ed, all right. So,
I'm sorry. It won't happen again.
So the first thing is, I'm glad that we got to see the debates. I think it was a good service to the people of Texas. Beto O'Rourke had been calling for these debates very early on. Initially, I can't remember the number he called for. He went back and forth, he and Cruz negotiating on it, finally making them happen and getting to see them in the arena. This is a great thing, very high profile, lots of eyeballs on this debate. But what we really got to see was their personalities come through. And that, I think, was a good first step. What we're going to get to see in the next one is how they interact with the public. How do they interact with the voters in what I believe is a town hall format, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what it all comes down to is how can they address issues that affect people in their everyday lives? Healthcare, public education, other issues that are really at the forefront of politics right now. That, I think, will come through at the next debate, more so than it did in the first.
Matt, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I was at a debate watch party in Austin the night of the debate, and Senator John Cornyn was there, and I think he really captured how a lot of Republicans feel having watched the debate. You know, he said that Beto O'Rourke is running for the United States Senate from the wrong state. If you look at what the takeaway for me on the debate is, I actually think that the debate moves the race away from personalities, away from Beto being hip and playing guitar and all this silly stuff that doesn't matter. It's moved it more to issues. And I think Ted Cruz has an advantage on issues. This is a Republican state, it's a conservative state. Whatever you want to say, positive or negative about Beto O'Rourke, he does have liberal positions. He's not running as a moderate Democrat, he's running as a full-scale progressive in terms of the issues he's pushing. And he stuck with that in the debate. He deserves credit for sticking with his principled views. I just think they're outside the mainstream of the majority of Texans, and I think that's the most important takeaway from the debate, but there's still 2 more debates to go.
The town hall set to happen this Sunday in Houston. They're going to talk about domestic policy. What issues do you think Ted Cruz really has the upper hand when it comes to domestic policy that you think he'll shine this weekend on?
Well, I'd say 2 that come to mind right away. I think certainly economic issues, fiscal issues, the tax cuts, the regulatory, the strong economy, 18-year consumer confidence, 18-year high in consumer confidence. The numbers are very, very strong in the economy right now. Over 4% GDP growth, wages rising, private sector hiring continuing to set new records. So I think he wants to talk about the strong economy and the fact that our work would support tax increases. Secondly is immigration. And I think that there's a pretty clear distinction between these 2 candidates on the issue of immigration. Cruz wants to stop illegal immigration. He wants to reform legal immigration. He wants to secure the border, the southern border, finally and fully. And he wants to, make the clear distinction there on sanctuary cities, on abolishing ICE, these kinds of issues.
And so, Ed, what are your thoughts on where you think, because I think Matt brings up a good point, Beto O'Rourke does have some very progressive views. So when it comes to domestic policy and being in Texas, what do you think he's going to try to resonate with voters?
So I disagree that this is looking like a conservative state. I think traditionally Texas has been a conservative state, but it is more accurately defined as a growing state, the fastest growing state in America. And when you look at the turnout from 2016, 20% of the electorate were people who were new voters in 2016. That's 1.8 million people. Those are people coming in from other states. And the margins that those new voters offered were more in favor of Democrats than Republicans by a margin of 5-1. So let's talk about the issues that people care about. Yes, immigration is important. We need comprehensive immigration reform. Building a wall is not going to solve our problems when 40% of immigrants come here via plane and they overstay their visas. The only way to address that issue is to have some sort of comprehensive immigration reform. The other issue here is health care. Texas is the most uninsured state in America, and Ted Cruz is not only a guy who has been against the Affordable Care Act, but he filibustered it on the Senate floor. So he's got to explain that. Why was he so against it? Why was he so against access to affordable care? Why was he against access to pre-existing conditions? Those are things that I think we'll hear more about in this next debate, and I think they're going to be important issues throughout the campaign.
Obviously, we will be watching. We thank you both for joining us today. Thanks. And again, we're so excited to be able to bring this segment to you every Tuesday, so you'll have to tune back in for Face Off. All right, up next.